Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
It's a stunning daylight robbery at the most famous museum in the world that has everyone talking. A robbery right out of the movies, like something you'd see in an Ocean's 11.
We're just supposed to walk out of there with $150 million in cash.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just over a week ago, thieves disguised as construction workers stole 8 pieces of the French crown jewels, valued at more than 68 million euros. The robbery took less than 8 minutes and happened just after the museum opened on a Sunday morning. The thieves wore construction vests and concealed their face with balaclavas. They gained entry through an unsecured window using a furniture lift and used glass cutters to get into the display cases to steal the jewels. This past Sunday, a week after the heist, French authorities announced they had arrested 2 men, but have not yet laid any charges or recovered any of the jewels. I'm Richard Southern, and today on The Big Story, the Louvre robbery. Here to delve into the truly fascinating details of this stunning heist is Anthony Amore. He's an art theft expert and the author of The Rembrandt Heist. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us here on The Big Story. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me, first of all, what you made of how they got in and what it looked like. What did you take away from that?
There's a lot to take away from it. I would say it wasn't an unsecured window, and that's what really makes part of this interesting is that, they did this heist at 9:30 a.m. after the museum opened. And rather than enter through the open doors like all the rest of the visitors, they went to a secured window on a lift with a ladder and used, as you mentioned, a disc cutter to cut through the glass and get into this gallery to steal these gems rather than, essentially they broke into an open museum. And there's a lot about that that's interesting to me that makes me wonder if they had some sort of inside information that made them think this is the best way to get into this empty gallery.
Well, they wouldn't have been able, or correct me if I'm wrong, they wouldn't have been able to walk through security with the necessary cutting devices. Am I right?
Right, but there's other ways that they could get into those cases that I won't get into because I'd rather not give anybody ideas. But they could, and even if they wanted to use those devices, they could, rush into the museum in a smash and grab type thing. But on another level, though, why not break in before the museum opened? Like, why wait until it was open? Why not do it between 7 and 9, say, or any time before 9? So,
what do you think the reason was for that?
I think, again, I'm speculating, but my guess is that it had something to do with the fact that after the museum opens, some of its defenses would be down necessarily, like any other institution, not just museums, any place, any public place. So they must have known something about the security system that told them our best bet to get into the Apollo Gallery would be to cut through this window after opening and still find that gallery free of visitors, right? Because imagine in the world's the world's busiest museum, imagine going into that gallery and there are 200 people milling about, right? It would be very difficult to pull off the heist in that scenario. But they knew, even though the museum was open, it would be an easy job for them, or at least they would be able to do it unmolested at that time. So I think that's that points to some sort of inside info, in my estimation.
I assume you've seen there was video taken by tourists in the museum at the time that show these thieves at work, show them cutting through the display glass. They're not rushing around, Anthony, are they?
No. And, they took, you keep hearing different reports, 4 minutes or 7 minutes. I think the 7 minutes is from start to finish. I think the 4 minutes is in the gallery. First of all, that's a standard amount of time. I have found in my research that museum heists last between 3 and 9 minutes. So that's right in that window. But no, they went about their job professionally. I hate to use that term for evil men, but they clearly pulled off heist before, maybe not at museums, but at other institutions. So they were, believe me, they were nervous. I mean, any thief is. They go in and your fight or flight syndrome starts pumping. And I've spoken to a lot of people who've stolen art, and they'll tell you, your 3 minutes seems like 30 minutes when you're in there. But on the other hand, they weren't frantic because they've done this sort of thing before.
That cell phone video, Anthony, the alarms are blaring, right? But they're still going about their work. You don't see any security rushing towards them. Why would that be, do you think?
Well, two reports are that two security personnel, I'm not sure they're men, entered the gallery in response to the alarms, but the thieves threatened them and the guards backed off, which is proper. I mean, they're monitors, right? They're not there to fight. They're not trained to fight. They're not hired to fight thieves. They're hired to monitor situations and notify authorities when necessary. And that's what they did. And they got the public out safely, which is a real compliment to the security staff.
I would think that these display cases would be almost impossible to get into. How did they cut through that very thick glass?
Very few things are impossible to get through if you have the right tools. And it appears they had the equivalent of like a Sawzall to get through the case. I've been saying, if you have determined evil people who have the tools, there's very few things that can be fully protected. So that's why you have to build layers of security between what you're protecting and the bad guys.
They then leave through the same window they came in through and use that same lift to go back down to street level. There's also cell phone video of that. Again, they're very calm. And I guess that's because if you're witnessing someone just going about their daily work, it doesn't stand out, right? Whereas if someone's rushing around, you kind of take notice of it, don't you?
That's exactly right. They took advantage of the fact that passersby or even museum employees might think that this was business as usual. In fact, they were wearing high visibility vests. And, that's the last thing in the world you expect a burglar to be wearing, right? Something high vis, but they wore it as a disguise.
Let's talk about what they took. These are said to be like the crown jewels of France. What did you take away from their choice of what they stole?
They stole things that are highly valuable and slightly more saleable than, say, paintings from the Louvre. You can't sell a masterpiece stolen from the Louvre. There's no market for it. There's no fence that's going to be able to move it. It's too valuable. And you wind up stealing it, and there's nothing you can do with it. But when you steal jewels, if you separate them, they're easier, not easy, but easier to fence and monetize. And that's the whole goal, monetization. So jewels are an obvious target, right? Because, again, if you steal a crown with 1,000 gems in it and you separate, now you have 1,000 pieces you can sell. If you steal a Picasso and you cut it into 1,000 pieces, you have nothing you can sell. And that's probably at the heart of their target.
I mean, there is this debate, right, about what they will do with it. And some people think, well, they're going to keep those crowns and necklaces together. Maybe they say there was a very wealthy buyer who wanted these in his collection. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't. That's really doesn't happen. There are instances where it might happen in the Far East or, but not in the West. There are no Dr. Evil or Dr. No type figures out there who are commissioning heist for treasures like this so they can enjoy them themselves in their underground lair. That's not what happens. That happens in movies, but it doesn't happen in reality.
So you're saying the most likely scenario is they take these gems out of the necklace, out of the crown, and recut them somehow and then sell them?
Yeah, it's either that or the other scenario is steal them and hold them and hope that the institution or the French government puts up a reward and monetize it that way. So it's one of those two, I think, are the most likely scenarios.
Has there been instances in the past where there's that sort of ransom scenario for goods like this stolen from a museum?
In terms of paintings, yes. Paintings are stolen sometimes and used as collateral in the drug trade, or they're stolen and used that as get out of jail free cards. The initial goal is for the reward, an insurance reward. But the initial goal is money, right? That's what's at the heart of heists of highly valuable things, making money.
So they would need to, if they were breaking it apart, they need to find some sort of jeweler to recut them, someone who would look the other way.
Perhaps. Yeah. Maybe some don't need to be recut, but find somebody who's involved in the illicit trade of diamonds and gems, precious gems, and garner their assistance in recutting these pieces if necessary. There's no shortage of that sort of person out there. It's far more plausible. There's far more plausible deniability for a guy who's cutting gems who he doesn't know where they came from, quote unquote, than there is for, I cut a Van Gogh out of a frame. Can you repair this for me? I mean, that would be the painting equivalent, and that's you wouldn't be able to excuse why you did that.
Do you think they'll ever be recovered?
I do think there's a high probability of recovery, at least some or most of them, if not all. I think that the fact that reports are that some DNA has been recovered is very promising. I've urged the authorities to issue a reward to give the people holding these items an out, a way to get some money and give the jewels back and make this whole thing go away. I do think that eventually they will recover them.
You mentioned DNA, Anthony. What clues did authorities find here?
It's been reported that they found some DNA on the items that were left behind by the thieves. My understanding is that a vest was left behind, some tools, and possibly a helmet, a motorcycle helmet. I also have heard reports that the thieves tried to burn a vehicle that they used. And one can make a logical leap that if they tried to burn the vehicle, then there was possibly some incriminating evidence inside. So these are the things I think the authorities are focusing on in that part of the investigation.
So this was a big security failure by the Louvre, was it?
Well, anytime a successful robbery has been pulled off, it's billed as a failure, and I could understand that. I would say that, anytime you have hardened, experienced, determined thieves with the right tools and possibly inside information, it's a challenge for any institution. There is no institution that is impervious to theft, right? So I hate to be too hard on the Louvre. Clearly, by their own admission, there was a camera pointing in the wrong direction. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but suffice it to say that cameras were not showing that location. And, if you have a balcony, an exterior balcony outside a room with precious items like that, you should have camera coverage, of course, and they have admitted that. But, I can't think of a major museum that hasn't been robbed. So, in this age of the internet and social media and memes, it seems like the reputation for the Louvre for some time is going to be that their security is porous. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think this was a clever heist that took advantage of some weaknesses.
Yeah, and who knew about the weaknesses? I mean, you've talked about how maybe there was the thieves had some info. There may have been a camera turned the wrong way. What are the chances, do you think, Anthony, that this was an inside job?
Well, the FBI estimates that about 80%, if not more, museum heists involve some sort of insider or inside information. So it's hard to say exactly that, there was it was an inside job, quote unquote, or that maybe a disgruntled employee told the wrong person the wrong thing about security there. there's a whole gamut of what would classify as inside information. But in my estimation, I think I said right from the onset on to Canada. Actually, I was on Canadian television and said, this smacks of an insider. So I think the likelihood is high. And I did read that, the Louvre hired CGI, a company out of Israel that was successful in the past in this sort of case. And the chairman of CGI said to the Israeli press that there was an inside component. So I hate to say I'm happy to be right. I just wish this whole thing never happened.
You're a man who was you work for the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It suffered its own robbery quite a number of years ago, and you've been trying to recover pieces from that robbery, haven't you?
Yes, there are 13 pieces stolen. It's the biggest property theft in the history of the world. In terms of estimated dollar values reported in the press, it dwarfs the loss from the Louvre. It's a real tragic thing. I've spent 20 years there doing this, and you really get a good sense of how much these missing works meant to so many people, what they mean to our cultural patrimony, and what we can learn from them. And it's not a victimless crime.
Do you think museums now will do anything different in light of this very brazen theft at the most famous museum in the world, Anthony?
Anytime something like this happens, museums are forced to be introspective and look at themselves and wonder, the natural number one question is, could this same MO happen here? But then secondly, it does make you review everything you do. I know it did for me. In my role, we are constantly reevaluating our security. And I mean on a daily basis. We're auditing what we do. We're rethinking and trying to innovate. And when you see something like this, it reminds you, it's tricky because there's that old saying, not that old, but famous, that if you see something, say something. Well, passersby at the Louvre on Sunday, what they saw wouldn't probably prompt any of them to say anything, because it just looked like construction workers working on a facility. So you have to really be on your toes. You have to be creative mentally. And finally, you have to be able to convince your leadership at your institution that it can happen here, because most people think it can't.
Tell us a little bit about your book before we go, Anthony. You have an interesting book out.
Oh, thank you. My next book, titled The Rembrandt Heist, it will be released on November 4th. And it is an incredible tale about the greatest art thief who ever lived, a guy named Miles Connor, who stole a Rembrandt from the MFA in Boston in 1975 for the most amazing reason that your readers will ever come across. It's just a fascinating tale, but it's also a tale about friendship and loyalty that I think readers will enjoy.
Anthony, super interesting. Thank you so much for bringing your expert perspective to this. We really appreciate you being here on The Big Story today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
That was Anthony Amore, an art theft expert, and that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. You can find us on X at The Big Story FPN, or send us an email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can get new episodes every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a comment or share with a friend. I'm Richard Southern. Thanks for listening.